Again, through this Christmas season, we've been looking at passages in the Bible that talk about these four traditional themes of Advent: hope and peace, love and joy. This morning, we're going to focus primarily on joy. When you think even in our culture, even amongst non-Christians, many non-Christians will talk about this idea of joy and that we kind of know it goes with Christmas. And so whether it's in a yard decoration or whether it's Christmas ornaments, we have joy themes in our Christmas ornaments. Even secular businesses will send out Christmas cards that will feature joy as kind of the center of that. Or even take, for example, Coca-Cola made one of the themes of their advertising through Christmas joy, that somehow that you will have joy through drinking Coca-Cola. Let me ask you, when you think of Christmas joy, what do you think of? I mean, for some, we might be saying, well, I hope I get that one special Christmas present I really want. And for others, you might be thinking, it's the joy of seeing your kids come down on Christmas morning and their excitement of opening the presents. I'm blessed to come from a large and healthy extended family. For many, like our family, when you think of joy, we think of the memories of gathering together and enjoying the family and that community. For some, it might be traditions. You find joy in watching, the Charlie Brown Christmas and movies like that together. Others, it might be something my kids, they always wanted to go see the Christmas lights. That was part of that experience. And the more lights, the bigger, the better. I think if we were to ask people around us, when you think of Christmas joy, we'd get all kinds of answers. But I want to start with the question of saying, when you think about what the Bible talks about, that we would have joy at Jesus' birth, what is it talking about? When we light a candle for Advent, talking about joy, what kind of joy are we celebrating? And we sing songs, we sing joy to the world. Joy to the world, the Lord has come. And we sing a song, but what is that joy? What does it mean? Is it just wishful thinking? Is it hoping that things go well? What is the promise of Christmas joy? The passage we're looking at this morning, we read a few moments ago, teaches us that Jesus came to bring joy. John 15:11. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you. And if we discover that joy, that we will have a joy that would be full. What is that? I'm going to come back to that verse later, but let me now go to a very familiar passage, Luke chapter 2. Luke chapter 2, we have the story of Jesus' birth. And at one point in time, we have the angels that had come to the shepherds to announce this wonderful news. In verse 8 and 9, we read this. And in that same region, there were shepherds out in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with great fear. Now, practically, to be real, I can understand their fear. I mean, if you're out in the middle of a field, it's a dark night, it's a bunch of stars, you got, shepherd are the only ones making noises. Suddenly there's this great light and an angel's over you and he starts talking. I would be scared to death too. That's overwhelming. But the angel tells them, fear not. For behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. Good news, the word good news is the same word that we translate the gospel. The gospel is the good news. And what is the good news of great joy? Literally, the word there translated great, it's the Greek word that we transliterate maga, or mega. Not mega, it's a different word. We've got mega joy, that is something that we gave good news of mega joy. And what is the source of this incredible joy? For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior who is Christ the Lord. The good news is the long-awaited Messiah is born. The Savior, the Messiah, who is Christ the Lord, that he would bring the good news of the one that would usher into the kingdom of God so that all who believe in him, our sins would be forgiven, that we would be ushered into this kingdom. Now, every year we read this passage. We hear Linus read it in the Charlie Brown Christmas. We know the promise, but again, the question is, what is the joy that is being promised us? So the fact is that a lot of people right now, you may not be feeling joyful. In general, actually, we think of Christmas as being a joyful time, and we celebrate that. But the reality, if you talk to anyone in mental health profession, depression is highest. Suicidal thoughts are highest. The counselors and psychologists are busiest at the Christmas season. That's when people struggle the most. And the fact is, for many of us here, this Christmas, when we think of joy, that can seem almost like an idealistic wish. Why? Because, we've had times when circumstances were good. That's what even Margaret was talking about. But then there are those seasons where there's loss or there's difficulty or disappointment or pain. And how do we find joy then? Now, to try to deal with that question, let me, in a sense, step back and look at a kind of this bigger theme that we've been looking at throughout this whole series on Advent. Throughout the series, we've been looking at these 4 traditional themes of Advent: hope, peace, love, and now this week, joy. And each, what we're seeing is that the Bible promises that each of these are things that Jesus came to bring. We can know through Jesus Christ. And when we think about these things, I think we could say that in a sense, they're the most valuable and most important things that we could pursue in life. The things that we're most driven to pursue. And here's what I mean. If you had true love, if you had true hope, if you had true peace, if you had true joy this Christmas season, what else would you want? I mean, if you had those things, isn't that all that you live for? And if you think about it, all the things that we do long for, all the things that we pursue in life are all means to those ends. We're pursuing things that we hope are going to bring us hope. We hope that are going to bring us joy or peace or love. Now, the problem is that even if we pursue these, one of the things we've seen in the past weeks is that the world talks about these things and offers them, but they have a very different meaning, a different definition. And we've got this problem of differing definitions of all these things. So when the average person talks about hope, they're talking about just a desire for something in the future. Maybe realistic, may not. We hoped the Ohio State Buckeyes would win yesterday. And that was realistic hope. They won. Whether I'm wearing Christmas colors or scarlet and gray, you decide. Just like that's encouraging. But then we can hope that you win the lottery or the Browns would have a great season. Unrealistic, never going to happen. It's hope. It's something that is a desire. Biblical hope isn't a desire. It's a confident expectation of a promise not yet realized. And same thing when we talk about peace. The world's definition of peace, it's the absence of problems, the absence of conflict. Biblical peace is something that we have that transcends those problems. It's a peace in God that transcends circumstances. Or love. Earthly love is emotion and a feeling. Biblical love is a commitment. It's an action. It's something that's far deeper. And so likewise, when we now talk about joy, it's something very different. See, even if we look at John, we're looking today at John 15, but if we go back even a few verses, 14 and 15, what we're seeing is that Jesus in that section talks about this problem of definitions, that the world offers something different than what he does. So in John 14, he talks about peace. And look what he says. The world offers a different peace. Peace I live you, my peace I give you, and not as the world gives do I give you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. The world offers a peace, but it's a different kind of peace. It's a counterfeit. Or John 15:9, he talks about the world offers love. But what does he say? As a father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. It's not the world's love, it's my love. I have a different kind of love. And this week we're seeing what Jesus talks about joy. And likewise, he offers us a different kind of joy. It's not just joy like the world, it's a different joy. These things I've spoken to you that my joy may be in you. It's a different source. And if my joy is in you, you're going to have a joy that's going to be full. That's an incredible promise. See, the world talks about these things. But when the world talks about and offers hope and peace and love and joy, it's a counterfeit. It's a copy of the real thing. See, think about this. I remember back a number of years ago, I don't know if any of you all have been to New York City, but a number of years ago when I was in New York City, when I'm there, I was approached numerous times by people offering to sell me Rolex watches. And they would come up and they would say, oh, these are real things, and for this reason we got this extra shipment, and they're worth thousands of dollars, but we'll sell it to you for $50. Now, the fact is, that's a line. It's not a real thing. It's a counterfeit. It may look kind of the same, but the fact is, it's a cheap quality. It's something that's probably going to break by the time I get home. And in the same way, the world offers a counterfeit love and a counterfeit peace and a counterfeit joy. Even this counterfeit, though, can look good for a little while. Why? Because the real thing is so incredible. Even the counterfeit can look good, but it is counterfeit. It's something that's going to break. It's something that's not going to last. And the world tells us not only it's this counterfeit, but it tells us where to look for it. Something in the world. See, because there's something really important to see here, and that is when we think about changing the definition of something, we're not only changing what we're looking for, we're also changing where we think we'll find it. There's a link between how we define something and where we think the source of that thing is. So if peace is the absence of problems and we get it by controlling things, when we're going to try to control our life to try to find peace. If love is a feeling that somebody gives us, we're going to try to find the person that's going to give us that feeling of love. See, even to illustrate this point, think of one of the most famous stories at the Christmas time, A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge. And when you think about this, throughout the story, he defined the pursuit of happiness a certain way. In his mind, happiness and contentment was acquiring wealth and acquiring power. And therefore, he sought it by trying to take advantage of other people and trying to get as much as he could to gain as much wealth as possible. But then in the story, his experience with the ghost of Christmas present and past and future, he realized that his definition was all wrong. That in the story, his definition of happiness and contentment were not found in the pursuit of wealth and power, but it was to be found in love and generosity and relationship. So because he had a different definition, now he changed his source. So what does he do on Christmas morning? He gets up and now he tries to heal relationships and he tries to give things away. And he's still pursuing happiness and contentment, but a different definition and a different source. So then we have to ask, what is the true source of true hope, true peace, true love? Actually, we've already seen it. Let me go back to a couple verses we just read a few minutes ago. What do we see in John 14 and 15? In John 14, what did Jesus say? Peace I leave you, my peace do I give you. It's his peace. It's not only a different kind of peace, he's the source of peace. In John 15:9, he says, abide in my love. He's the source of love. God is love. John 15:11, these things I've spoken to you, that my joy may be in you. My joy, it's not only a different kind of joy, he's the source of true joy. And I think the problem that many of us have is that we not only buy the wrong definition of our culture, but because we take the wrong definition, we then look in the wrong place. We look in the wrong source. And if we're looking in the wrong source, what that means by biologically, implication is that we are not looking in the right place. We are disconnected from the right source. Let me even try to illustrate this. Okay, I brought these flowers for my wife. Because I want to be a wonderful husband. I want to have, beautiful flowers on a Christmas table. And I would like to think that she thinks that I bought these flowers for her. And then I thought of a sermon illustration, and I decided I could use it. If she thinks I got them as a sermon illustration and I'm giving it to her after I've used them, I don't get as much credit. So hopefully you might be thinking she deserves a lot of credit for letting me use her as a sermon illustration. Probably she gets all the credit in this one. Okay, so here's the illustration. They're beautiful flowers, right? What do you think they're going to look like a week from now? Well, they're going to start to droop, and some of them are going to pluck out. What 2 weeks from now? They're all probably going to be dead. Why? Because when we buy a bouquet of flowers, they're cut off from the roots. They're cut off. In a sense, they're cut flowers, and we bring them home and we put them in water and we enjoy their beauty for a little while, but only for a short time. Because after a short time, because of their lack of rootedness, because they're not connected to their source of nutrients in life, they die. In fact, the dying process begins as soon as the flower is cut. But for a little while, they still appear beautiful. And in the same way, we need to realize when we look for love and when we look for peace and we look for hope and we look for joy and we look for it in the wrong places, it's not only we're looking in the wrong places, but we're cut off from the right source. The flower is cut. We're cut off from the stem. And we need to realize that our only hope is to be plugged into the stem. Now, in the past 3 weeks, we've been looking at this with hope and joy or love and peace. And this morning, I want to spend the rest of our time really focusing on our pursuit of joy. So when we talk about joy, how does our world define joy? It has a concept of joy. It's a counterfeit idea. It has the name and the look of the real thing, but it's different in substance. You see, when our world talks about joy, I think it confuses the idea of biblical joy and happiness, temporary happiness. When we think of joy, we think of them being the same thing, but happiness isn't the same thing. It's a short-term positive feeling that comes as the result of positive circumstances. I think even when Margaret shared her story, it's like, okay, we got in these situations and we didn't have joy. The circumstances weren't there, but yet somehow she can look back and say there was joy. So if I could give a definition of the world's idea of joy, it's positive feelings of enjoyment and happiness that result from positive circumstances. It's short-term, and it's totally dependent. So if we have the right circumstances, things are good. If everything's going well, if your family's together and everyone's healthy and everyone's getting along, if you have money to buy the Christmas presents this year, then you can have a joyous and Merry Christmas. For everyone else, good luck, you know, unless you find the magic pixie dust of Christmas, or unless Santa comes, you're out of luck. And here's what we need to realize. When God promises joy at the birth of Jesus, his promise is not, if you follow after me, I'm going to fix all the broken parts of your life. I'm going to provide the magic dust that's going to make everything work out well. I'm going to be the Santa Claus that's going to give you the wish so you have the right circumstances so you can be happy. But God doesn't promise to change our circumstances. He doesn't promise us happiness. He promises us a joy that transcends circumstances. The fact is, there are many people here that this Christmas will be difficult. And the fact is that we need to be aware of that. You've lost a loved one, and you can't imagine what this Christmas is going to be like without them. Your marriage is at the breaking point, and you're trying to figure out how to make it work where it's broken this year. And that this Christmas is going to bring a new kind of loneliness. You've lost your job, and you're worried about paying bills, let alone buying presents. Or you've gotten health news, and how do you find joy when the week's gift next week includes chemo? See, but what you need to realize is we're not then talking about joy, that's happiness. Biblical joy is something that transcends happiness. It's the ability to find a joy in the midst of the hardest and most painful times. It's what Paul talks about, the peace that passes understanding. When you think about biblical joy, it's something totally different. It's what Jesus talks about when he says in John 15:11, these things I have given you that my joy may be in you. It's an inner peace that transcends circumstances. It's the type of joy that you see the Bible talk about in a passage like Acts 5:41, when the apostles rejoiced because they had been found worthy to suffer the name of Christ. Or in Acts 16, when Paul and Silas are singing in prison, rejoicing after they've been beaten and now they're sitting in a Philippian jail. It's not that they enjoyed those things. It's not that they made them happy. They weren't masochists where they say, beat me some more. I mean, that's like silly. That's of course not. No, these experiences brought pain and suffering, but in the midst of the crisis, they had a joy that transcended their circumstances. It's what James talks about when he says that we can count it joy when we have trials. How do we do that? That makes no sense unless you understand that joy, biblical joy, is something unique. It's not happiness at all. Let me try to give you a definition of biblical joy. I've been working on this week, and this is the best that I could do. Joy is a spirit of optimistic confidence and contentment that transcends circumstances and which comes from trusting in God's character, his sovereignty, and the goodness of his plan. It's this spirit of optimistic confidence that will let us transcend circumstance. Why? Because we know God's good. We know that he's in charge, and we know that he's got a good plan, that he's going to work all things out for good. So that's why it says, count it joy when you encounter trials, because you know that God has a purpose. It's not just a feeling or emotion, it's something deeper. In time, joy will bring a contentment and even feelings of happiness, but it's something that transcends even when we don't have that. It's a spirit of optimistic confidence that transcends the most difficult of circumstances. Think about the Christmas story itself. Think about what we celebrate, what happened 2,000 years ago in Bethlehem. When you think about the circumstances for Mary and Joseph especially, they were far from ideal. Mary became pregnant when she was engaged to Joseph. She knew it was a miracle. The angel told her. Nobody else knew it. In fact, Joseph at first was going to reject her and until an angel appeared to Joseph and told him that it was of God, but I don't think the angel appeared to anyone else. And from circumstances, I can't get into it, but from circumstances, it's almost certain that Mary's family and Joseph's family both rejected them, both threw them out. And here you've got this incredible turmoil. And then they had to travel nearly 100 miles to Bethlehem by foot while she's 8 months pregnant. Then there's nowhere for them to stay. They end up delivering a baby in a stable surrounded by animals. And if you step and you think outside of the idealized Christmas story and try to put yourself in this scene, that's not a happy scene. I think about my wife. What if during her first pregnancy, if at 8 months pregnant, we're told that we have to walk 100 miles to a different place. We get there, we can't find a room to stay in. We end up in a stable surrounded by animals. She gives birth there with no family to support us. We end up putting our baby in a feeding trough. I would tell you she's not going to be, best life now, let's get a selfie, look at this. No, she's going to be sitting there saying, God, why? Why would you do this? This is this is a hard scene. And yet it was the cause of great joy, of mega joy, in spite of the circumstances. A kind of joy different than anything offered by the world. A joy that is found, it's not only different, but it's found in a different source. And that's the key to understanding everything that is being taught here. Again, look at what Jesus teaches, John 15:11. These things I've spoken to you that my joy may be in you and your joy may be full. He's telling them this on the night before he was betrayed, on the night before he's going to be put on that cross, and he's talking about joy. How in the world can he do that? Because he's not only telling us about the kind of joy he had, but when he said it's my joy, he's saying it's rooted in me. It's not only his joy because it's the type of joy, it's because he is the source of joy. When you think of where does joy come from, it comes from the character of God. God is the source. Even as God is love, and love, the very definition of love, comes from God. God is joy. The definition of joy comes from God. All joy, all love, all peace are realities that are found outside of ourselves, that are found outside of our world. We cannot be the source of our own love, our own peace, our own joy. We can only find these things in the character and the promises of God. And while the world may offer counterfeits, they're just that. They're counterfeits. They're found only in God because they're rooted in God. God is love. God is joy. God is peace. And only in a relationship with God can we discover these realities. And the closer we get to him, the more that we're connected to him, the more that it's something that we experience. Joy comes from connection to Jesus. Now, we've been looking this morning at John 15 and verses 8 through 11, but let me go a few verses back. In the context of John 15, right before this, Jesus was talking about this imagery of him being like the vine, and we are the branches, and that we're called to abide in him, to be connected to him as a vine would be connected to, or branches connected to the vine. Look what he says, John 15:1. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch that in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that does not bear fruit, he prunes that it may bear more fruit. Continues, abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me, and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And here's the idea, that he is the source. And as a branch is connected to the vine, and from the vine it gains the nutrients of life. In the same way, Jesus is the source. And only when we're connected in him can we have the nutrients of life, of spiritual life, of who he is. And just like when you think of the vine, if it's a grapevine, if it's connected, it will bear the fruit of the vine. It will always bear grapes. Now, if God is by nature love and joy and peace, what it means is when we're connected, we will naturally bear the fruit of love and joy and peace. He continues in verse 8 by saying, by this my Father is glorified, that you may bear fruit, and so prove yourselves to be my disciples. Now, here's something important I want to make clear. It's not teaching in any way, well, try to be good, and if you're good enough, and if you somehow perform, and you'll earn God's love. No, we don't become connected because we have fruit. We have fruit because we're connected. And the gospel is not religion. It's not try harder, keep the rules, perform. The gospel is about Jesus Christ coming and making a way for us to know God in a way that we could never do ourselves. We're not saved by works. We have to admit our need. God, I'm cut off from the vine. God, I'm wilting away. And we need to say, God, I ask you to forgive me. And through grace, through what Jesus Christ did on the cross, where he took our sins, forgive me. And God, I need you to join me to yourself. I want to be connected to you. I want to be connected to the source of life. That's not something we could do in any way in ourselves. For some here, it's again, if you're trying, okay, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to find it. The gospel message is about God coming and making a way for you to know him, not through your efforts, but by admitting your need and accepting what he has done for you. Now, staying with the illustration here, as we abide in him, if we're like branches connected to the vine, only then does his life flow through us. And again, if we're connected, naturally we will have the fruit of that vine. And the closer we get to Jesus, when we talk about joy, the more that we will know joy. Because if he's the source of all joy, then it follows logically, the closer we get, the more experience we're going to experience his joy. The main source, though, is proximity to God, to God himself. Contrary to public opinion, some people would say, well, God, he's about rules. No, God is the source of all joy. He's the most joyful being in the universe. He's the source of all joy. In his book, Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis explained this in a uniquely powerful way. Let me go ahead and read from what he said. Again, this is from Mere Christianity. He says this: good things as well as bad, are caught by a kind of infection. If you want to get warm, you must stand near the fire. If you want to be wet, you must get into the water. If you want joy and power, peace, eternal life, you must get close to or even into the thing that has them. They are not a sort of prize that God could, if he could choose, hand out to anyone. They are a great fountain of energy and beauty, spurting up at the very center of reality. If you are close to it, the spray will wet you. If you are not, you will remain dry. And that's powerful in what he's saying. The formula is we've got to get close to the source of joy itself. They're not independent realities. They're not just things that God could give away at like a prize store and say, I want to give you joy. No, he's saying God didn't do it. Jesus is this fountain of joy, and what we need to do is we need to get close, that he's a fire in a sense, the source of all love and peace and joy. And if you want to be warmed, the only hope is to get close to the fire. If you don't get close, you're going to stay cold. There's no other way that happens. He's the fire, the source of all joy. And I don't know about you, but if I look at it and I say, man, I have times that I'm cold and I'm struggling and I don't feel the joy. And man, I want to experience that. But the only hope is to get close to his warmth, being close to the source, Jesus himself. And how do we do that? Well, look at John 15:10. It says, if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments. Abide in his love. And what Jesus is teaching us here is, how do we grow closer? Well, we grow closer by knowing and obeying his word. And you might be saying, well, that sounds like religion and performance. Well, no, it's not, actually. Because again, this is not saying this is how you get connected to the vine. This is saying if you are connected to the vine, how do you experience all the nutrients and the life-giving power? I want the love and joy and peace flowing through me. I want to be totally connected. How do I do that? When he says abide in the love, it's saying it's doing so in the result of a relationship of faith and trust. It's realizing how much we have been loved. If I really understand that God is the source of joy and of peace and of love, if I really believe that and I know that he's pursued me, you see, then I'm going to say, well, how do I get closer? The more that I get close, I want to know him. I want to know his heart. I want to know his truth. And the more that I align my life with that truth, I'm getting closer and closer to the source. And I believe it because I believe he's good and he's loving and he's joyful and all his commandments are in my best interest. He's the source of perfect joy and peace and love. And the more that I align my life with his will, the more I'm going to discover that in my life. See, that's what I want. I want to get close. I want to be warmed. I want to be changed by his joy. That's what the point when Jesus says in John 15:11, these things I have spoken to you that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be full. I want that kind of fullness of joy. I need that. I don't just want to talk about it and send the Christmas cards. I want to experience that. And so the question is, if he is the source, we have to ask, are you connected? Are you connected to Jesus? To what degree are you connected? There may be some that when you look at it and you say, man, I'm trying to do all I can. There may be some that, right now you're like these flowers. And there's still some beauty in there because the beauty of what God created is there, but man, you're cut off from the roots. And you can try to say in the world, okay, how do I put my water in there? And how do I put some sugar? How do I do something to prolong it? But the fact of the matter is that if we're cut off from the source, there's nothing we can do to stop from that decay, that we're dying. And the only hope is to be connected to the root. Now, I cannot do anything to reconnect these to the root. They're dying. Sorry, Sandy, it's nice flowers. Enjoy them for a little while. The incredible thing is when you look at what Jesus says in John 15, he says, I've come to reconnect you. We are all cut off, but he says, I am the vine, and I want to now reconnect you. I want to connect you to the vine. I want to connect you back to the source. And if you're here today, I want you to realize that, again, this is not a story about religion and what you do, how you perform. It's a story of God who loved you so much that he came and pursued you, took on humanity, so that through his death, you could have a relationship with him. But part of that is recognizing, God, that's what I need. I've been on my own way. I've been following the wisdom of the world, and man, I'm just wilting. And God's grace to you, his word to you is today he's calling out and saying, no, I want to reconnect you to the source. You can be grafted back into the vine so that you have the source of love and joy and peace. So these aren't just ideas and things that you put on your Christmas card. They're experiential realities for you. But it starts by acknowledging, God, I need you. I ask you to forgive me through Jesus Christ. I want you to be connected. I want you to be the Lord of my life. And there may be here some that for the first time, that's what you do today. That's what you do this Christmas season, to pray that prayer, and God will meet you. I'd love to talk with you more if you want to know more about that. There's some of us, when we look at what Jesus teaches here in John 15, he's talking then to believers and saying, okay, now you've been connected, but you can disconnect. You can kind of be halfway broken off. And what do I need to do? The closer I get to God, the closer I get to the source, the more I'm going to experience his love and joy and peace. And so what do we need to do? God, help me, attach me. God, I recognize that you are the flame, that you are the fire, and the only way for me to experience the warmth of your presence, the warmth of your love, the only way for me to not be, dying out in the cold is to get close to that fire. And there may be some here today that when you look at it, you've been trying all these different things, and you've been trying to make it work, and I want you to see that God invites us to come back to the source. And even if we wandered away, it's not, here's what you need to do. It's not a condemnation. It's a gracious invitation. And we accept the invitation. See, for each one of us, this is the truth. God, when we talk about hope and love and peace and joy, these are not just wishful thinking, joyous ideas, as the world may call it. They're realities. They're realities that we can know and that we can experience in good times and in bad. And I hope and pray that this Christmas season, they're not just songs that we sing. They're not just baubles that we put on our trees, but that they're realities. And that this Christmas season, it would become more real to you than ever before as you learn to run back to the source, to Jesus Christ, who is not only offering us joy, but who is joy, who is love, who is peace. And in knowing him, we can know all those things as well.
If you have a question about the message, Community Church, or Jesus Christ, send us a text to 330-400-3242. You can learn more about our events and community groups at ccpl.life/connect. There you can also send in a prayer request. We would love to pray for you. Have a blessed Lord's Day, and we'll see you on Sunday.